Do you feel, and you already shook your head no, do you feel that moving to LA has helped your career grow? And do you think that it's necessary? Welcome to Behind the Slate, where I sit down with fellow voice actors and other industry artists to have a fireside chat. I'm your host, Christian O'Boyle. If you'd like to know more about me, please check out my website at christianoboyle.com. In this episode, I'll be talking with Michael Schwalbe, a director, writer, entrepreneur, and full-time voice actor and singer based out of LA. He is often referred as a vocal chameleon, and he has performed up to 60 roles in a single game. He can be heard in dozens of video game titles, as well as commercials and corporate campaigns. During and after college, Michael has sang and performed everything from rock to metal, classical, opera, barbershop, and much more. Graduating with a bachelor's degree in music business from Belmont University, Michael then spent several years working at Warner Music Nashville while continuing his vocal pursuits. Eventually, his talent started opening up doors at Warner, culminating in voicing Blake Shelton's 2013 CMA promotional campaign, directly leading to his voiceover and voice casting business, What He Said Voiceovers LLC. 5 years later, Michael has won an SOVAS award for Outstanding National Commercial Voiceover, directed over dozens of video games, and acted in many more. He loves spending time in singing with his wife, Courtney, an accomplished vocal teacher and opera singer herself, playing video games and board games.
It's pretty insane. Like, I went to Austin last week and just got back, and like, you forget that sometimes you have to plan around weather. Like, we were
Yeah.
going to go do something in the city, and then my wife's like, oh, it's supposed to rain on Monday. And it legitimately like took me aback. I was like, wait, like what would we do? How do we cope with that?
How
So,
do you live? How,
so how quickly you forget, because I've spent the last 10 years in Nashville where it rains. We get more quantity of rain than Washington does.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Everyone's like, Washington's the rain city. It's like, no, we're overcast mostly, but
right. Yeah. Nashville gets 50 inches of rain a year. And so like every 3 days you get an inch of rain basically, or feels like it. So it's
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, we didn't come here
Yeah.
to talk about the weather.
No, but perfect segue from Nashville to LA. I know that many voice actors actually feel that moving to LA or New York are like is a must for their career. Like they're like, if I'm gonna ever succeed, I have to move to one of these cities, maybe Dallas. Do you feel, and you already shook your head no, do you feel that moving to LA has helped your career grow? And do you think that it's necessary?
Those are two super different questions. Obviously, I think I'll answer. Well, I'll say for my career, it's the shorter answer. It definitely helped my career grow. Um, but is it necessary? I don't think so. It also vastly depends on the genre of voiceover that you specialize in or that you do the most of.
Mhm.
Because, like, I have a friend that I won't name who lives in Kansas, um, Kansas City, and he's been agonizing over whether to move to Los Angeles. He makes like 350K a year. I mean, he makes a lot of money, and he does primarily promo and commercial work,
Right.
um, with some games, indie games here and there for fun on the side, but mostly commercial. And like live announce kind of stuff. And so I told him finally, and he just bought a new house in Kansas, so I think he gave up on the idea. But he asked me if I like was happy that I had moved here and if I thought it was a good idea. And I was like, look, man, the reason I moved to LA is so I could have or try to have the kind of career that you've got in Kansas. If I was making that much money in Nashville, I would have never I'm sure I would have never left. I
Yeah.
loved Nashville, but I kind of hit the ceiling there, or so I thought. But like he's got major national representation already. I had to move to LA to get that. And so, so everybody's at different places, especially uh, character work is a difficult dilemma because character work, the big character stuff like network animated shows, Pixar movies, whatever, that kind of stuff is a lot in LA, and
Right.
you kind of need to be there for a lot of it. But the flip side is that most character work doesn't really pay very well. Video games don't, union video games, there's no residuals. You book a union session, you'll make like $800 after your P&H, and that sounds like a lot of money. It's not in LA. And you don't, book that many. And some people do, like Troy and Noah North, and those kind of guys can book major union games every week.
Right.
But for most actors, especially if you're new to the city, you'll get like some side roles, like Grunt C or something. You'll get like a one session.
Some Walla.
Yeah, or Walla in an animated thing. Right, exactly. And so you'll make, boy, if it's Walla, not much, like $300 maybe, or if it's a union game, like 800, and then that might be your one big credit for the month. If you're just, especially if you don't have like major national representation trying to send you like big auditions every day, it can be really hard to get in on those. So
Yeah.
for those kind of people, would I say you should move to LA to pursue character work? Like, ugh. I mean, maybe if you're single and you're cool with living in a like 4 or 5 roommate situation in a small house, maybe with other actors, you can share a booth or something. I mean, you can maybe find somewhere for like 800 to $1,000 a month rent doing that. And then maybe you can scrape together a living, especially if you're working a second job. But it's not glamorous, and if you want to have a family already and move out here to do character work, I wouldn't advise it.
Yeah.
And I was already, making a comfortable living in Nashville, primarily doing corporate and commercial work before I decided to make the move. But at the time I wasn't married, and I was financially stable enough that I could do that. And I had a ton of connections in LA. So it was really like a homecoming, when I'd go visit and like 20 people would come out to hang out with me, and or at least I'd go somewhere and 20 people there I would know. That's much less intimidating and difficult to when you've kind of got a support network already, versus if you're brand new, you don't know anybody, you've got no connections or clients, you're just like got a hope and a dream and a couple $1,000 saved up in your bank account for like a month of living expenses. So
Not a good idea.
So that's a very long answer. But yeah, LA is kind of a beast, and it's not necessary. I know a lot of people making a lot of money that are not in LA.
Right. And to kind of play off of that, there's a couple more. So you suggest that if anyone is going to move, obviously, just in general, to become a full-time business person, whether you should have at least 6 months to a year worth of backup money, because you never know when you get work, and that's just for any sort of entrepreneurial work.
Yeah.
So you suggest that to have, one, saved up a lot of money, and two, build up a body of work before moving, so that way you have something to show off.
Yeah, it's just really, I mean, you're moving to a place with so much competition. And if you can't scratch out a living in a much smaller pond, like doing online work or pay to play casting sites, or, whatever it is, local clients in your radio area, or whatever your market is. And I know some people just live in a place where there's like nothing, you're in a really small town. But there's still lots of online work. If you're struggling to book there, moving to somewhere with like 10 times the amount of competition is not going to go well. And really, you should try to save up that much money anyway at any stage of your career, because I've been doing full-time voiceover work for 6 years now, and like you really never get to a place where you're immune from just wild swings in your income. I mean,
Right.
this month I have made like no money at all. It's been the worst month in the last 6 years. It's been the worst month of my career. And that comes after having like the 5 best months of my career previously. I kind of was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, it can't be this good the whole year. But
And
like my annual income this year is more than 4 times what it was last year. And I was living last year, so like, but even despite that, even though I've got all these, and I'm not trying to just like, wow, I'm so great, I'm making tons of money. It's more of a, a warning, like, because I'm glad I saved money during those good times. If I had just been like, I'm on the gravy train, a new car, like a this and a that, a new remodel for my bathroom, like, this month would really have been tough because I haven't booked hardly anything this month. And so I'm trying to go back to basics, drill down, getting a coaching session with an actor that I really respect a lot to be like, hey, this is my fault? Like, have I fallen off the wagon and gotten really complacent in my reads? Because I was just thinking, wow, everything that comes out of my mouth is gold. Like that doesn't work very long. You always have to stay on top of your game and keep the iron sharp. So I'm trying to do some stuff to figure out why things just went from here to like straight down. But
the market changes too.
It does. It does. So like the read, and in some genres, it can change very quickly. Commercials have changed like 3 or 4 times just in the last 6 years about what books. And so if you're kind of just complacent and you're not listening to advertisements and listening to what is booking or listening to the performances in new video games, you could get left behind and not even realize like, oh, why am I not booking? And by the time that like a month goes by and you're not booking, it's kind of too late because you usually don't get paid for like 2 months. So you're kind of dooming yourself to a couple months, most likely, of having no income or cash flow because just clients are slow in paying you. So yeah, there's, you've always got to stay diligent and save and be frugal because even when you're full time, I mean, it can be, it's like a 98% income drop. It's really sad. This month has been bad. So we'll see. Talk to me next month and we'll see if
yeah, definitely. See if you go back up for sure. Now I know that I'm in the field. I'm fairly new to voiceover, not even 2 years yet. Very heavy in terms of the indie video games, a couple animations, stuff like that. That's where I'm mostly marketing. I am currently trying to market to the explainer videos and commercials. So that way I know that's where most of the money is in voiceover and narration specifically, but I know I can't do narration. 1, vocal type. 2, long form reading, not my forte. I can't.
I don't think your vocal type precludes you from narration. I think there's narration for really any kind of voice work. And especially you've got kind of a younger voice. And so a lot of corporate and tech companies and like training videos for employees and stuff is all going like, yeah, I'm hip and young and cool. I'm a new employee here, just like you, So, and for long form narration, like audiobooks, there's a book for every subject, whether you're like, the Sam Elliott voice of God kind of Southern thing, or, like a hero voice protagonist doing young adult novels to sexy stuff, so don't think that your voice stops you really.
Yeah. I haven't necessarily, I'm still kind of putting the limits. I know I shouldn't be putting limits on things, but, and then I also, it's long form, say a paragraph, and making the paragraph sound smooth. And obviously that's working on it. But before I got into voiceover, just reading was a struggle in general. So it's one of those things where it's like long form. I don't know if I can.
It's tough. I only very recently started doing audiobooks myself within like the last year. And that was only because a publisher just randomly emailed me out of the blue and was like, hey, do you want to do books for us? And I was like, if you pay me enough and also do all the editing for me, because I hate editing. And they were like, okay. And so, I guess I'm an audiobook narrator now. So I'm working on my 7th book now, and it is, this book is just brutal. It's miserable.
Hey, at least you don't have to do the editing though.
Yeah, that helps.
That's a big thing.
Yeah,
Big factor.
oh man, this current book I'm doing is it's written by a Harvard law professor, and it reads like it's written by like paragraph long sentences. It's just savage, but we're getting through it
Breathe.
slowly.
I can't. There's no.
It's really hard. I even asked them, I was like, is there like a really difficult text bonus you can pay me? And they're like, no. All right, well, whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, yeah, so do what comes naturally to you, of course. Like
For sure.
I still don't think I'm very good at audiobook narration, but they're sending it to me, so whatever. But like
Hey,
a tech
it's work.
company explainer or something that's like a new phone app information video, like that stuff's easy. One of my longest running clients is a production house in the Philippines or something, and they do like almost exclusively like Bitcoin videos for like Coin Geek conferences and like explainer videos for how Bitcoin works. So, there's a lot of just really oddball stuff out there that you can do. And it's just kind of trying to figure out where it's at, obviously.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I know that you started in Nashville. You're more on the music side. You studied got a degree in music business. And how did you fall from music into acting?
Sure. I end up telling this story a lot because it's, I guess, my origin story if I was a superhero, which I'm not. But so originally, I'll back up even a little further. I went to school, college in Columbia, Missouri at Mizzou, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I was a good writer, and I liked ancient history too. So I double majored in journalism and anthropology because why not? And so 2 years in, and all my professors are like, wow, you've got a great voice for broadcast. And I was like, I guess I'll do broadcast journalism. And anthropology was just fun. I liked the coursework. I wasn't going to do it for a career. Well, they ended up being like, hey, your next semester's journalism class is actually a part-time job doing sports writing at the local newspaper. And I was like, no, I can't imagine anything worse than that. For sports fans listening to this, I'm sorry. I don't care about it. So I was like, I can't do this. So I called up my mom. I'm like, Mom, I'm going to drop out of college and I'm going to move to Nashville and I'm going to be a rock star. Because I had discovered that I was really good at singing while I was there. And so she was like, how about we find you a school in Nashville instead? And I was like, that's probably prudent. And so I went to Belmont. I transferred to Belmont in Nashville, which is a pretty good music business school with a lot of music industry connections. And so I was like, well, I'll major in music business. And then that will give me connections that I can use to get my band signed, and then I can be like a successful performer and also have a business job if I need it on the side. Great. So I do that. I get my degree in music business. I get hired at a division of Warner Music Group, and I was doing sales on the Christian label Word Music, selling music and still performing with my band and singing and whatnot. And so long story short, through random happenstance, one of the people in like artists, creative media, whatever, heard me at some thing. I was doing dumb voices like I'm compelled to do. And one of them was, I think I was doing like, that kind of sleazy New Jersey guy. I'm like, yeah, what's it to you? You want to fight about it? And so he was like, who said that? And I was like, yeah, it was me. It's like, we need that voice for one of our videos that we're making. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I did that. And then they wanted me to do another video for something else. And then it just kind of, then it was like, you want to do the company phone system? And I'm just like, oh, this is cool. People like my voice. Well, then by the time they're like, hey, do you want to do Blake Shelton's CMA promotion video? And I was like, are you going to pay me? That's like Blake Shelton. And they're like, well, no, you're on the payroll. I was like, I'm on the payroll across the street in Christian sales and you're in artist media in Warner. Like, that's not the same payroll, So, and they're like, well, it's in-house, so take it or leave it. And it was like presenting for your CMA consideration, the reigning entertainer of the year kind of stuff. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll do it. But then that got the wheels turning in my head. That was like God telling me, if you're good enough for Blake Shelton, you're good enough for anybody. And I was like, yeah, God, I think you're right. I think I am good enough. And so then it was like, you know what? I'm going to do that for my job, and then I'm going to bill you. And so I saved up some money, and I sold a ridiculously big Magic the Gathering collection, and I quit my full-time salaried job doing sales at Warner to pursue voiceover full-time without having ever booked a single paid voiceover job. And now, 6 years later, I make about 8 times more money than I did then. But not maybe the goal path or the career path I would recommend for most people.
For sure.
But I had years now of sales experience. And so my mindset going into it was, if I can sell music, I can sell myself. And so I had, I could use spreadsheets, and I could create contact lists, and I knew how to research looking for new possible clients. But instead of looking for like praise bands or ministries to sell music to, I was like, I'll just look for production houses and people to sell myself to, and my ability to make their products and whatnot sound more professional. So I bought the right audio gear. I wanted to make sure that nobody knew that I wasn't a professional, and I could claim to be without proving myself wrong. And so I got quality audio gear. I got a professionally made website. I got a logo, business cards, professionally done demos, everything. So like all the bricks in the foundation were there. Again, so that if I was like, yeah, I'm a professional voice actor, nobody could be like, oh, well, what about that? That's not professional. And that's not cheap, but I wanted to make sure that I was investing in this. And with any new business venture, there's going to be an initial capital investment. And it's certainly a lot cheaper than starting a restaurant or something, It was like, I think probably $3,500 in total between everything that I spent just getting the foundation built. And so then I just started calling, emailing production houses and studios and stuff, and trying to get the momentum going. And I mostly only did corporate commercial stuff for the first couple years. And then after I was making a decent amount of money doing that, then I was like, hey, maybe I should like try to find an agent. And because I was full-time for 2 years before I had any agents. And so then I started reaching out to agents being like, hey, I'm a full-time actor and I don't have any agents. And so they're like, oh, well, do you want one? And so then I got like 4 within a few months. So because as my friend Doug Turkel says, and I love this, be the talent that an agent needs, not the talent that needs an agent. And that's a good doctrine. So that's my life story.
That is definitely very true. And that's a definitely very wild path into this. Yes, like you suggested, people probably shouldn't
do that.
That's probably not the wisest idea, but it worked. And that again, you went hard, you hit the ground running, and you set yourself up for success.
I think some key differences between like, say, where I was at in my life versus where say an anime fan that wants to move to Dallas to become a full-time anime actor, like based on the same kind of passion. The difference was I was pretty financially independent. I had bought a condo in Nashville during the height of the housing slump, and then I was renting out half of it to a college student during that time. So I didn't have much in the way of living expenses. I had no pets, no kids, no anything else. Like pretty much I could eat $5 of fast food a day and then just like really live very frugally. And then just my mortgage, which was mostly covered by the rent from this other kid. So I was in a really great financial place that I could kind of quit my full-time job on a lark. And I still bled money. I bled thousands of dollars for those first 6 months till I really started getting some consistent work out of it.
Right.
But then also I knew I could do it. And there's a difference between like knowing from like, I know I'm good because I love this and it's great, versus I did Blake Shelton's CMA promotion and they ran it. You know, like that's a big
Right.
difference. Even though I didn't get paid for it, that's a major credit that I could use.
Yeah, put that on your resume.
So that's a major credit I could use. I could put it on my website and people would think, oh, he's a big deal. And even though I wasn't. And so the lesson from that is look for what you can use to make yourself seem like a big deal at wherever you are. Like if it's at your day job, ask if you can do the phone system. Ask if they need any web content. And I'm not saying like work for free. You can still try to get some pay out of it. But if you're trying really hard to get a voiceover business off the ground, having a few company credits can help, and it doesn't cost you a ton of time. Way better to do that than to go to like Fiverr or something,
Yeah.
and work for pennies on the dollar.
I
Because
poked
like when
around
I
on it a bit. Not good.
because when I started, I right off the bat was like, I'm not going to work for less than $100. I'm right from the beginning, I'm not going to do free work aside from what I did at my record label when I realized, wait, I should be getting paid for this. Like that's a real thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was in a little bit different of a place. And I kind of had that support. I still wasn't great. I did some coaching here and there to shore up what I didn't know. And I did a lot of research and a lot of YouTube videos. And I taught myself how to use recording software and but when I was full time, quote unquote, I had the time to do that. So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what led from the acting into casting and being a casting
Sure.
director?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So I was doing my corporate and commercial stuff and making decent money. It was a lot of like $200 a pop here and there, like independent explainer videos for small businesses that would live on their website or something. Occasionally doing a commercial that would be like local radio. So it was mostly I was getting kind of quantity over like national campaigns or something. I like 2 years in, I love video games. I've been a video gamer my whole life. I mean, like bad, what like life consuming video gamer. I think I had, you'll laugh. This will be a big confession. I don't know if I've ever said this somewhere that people could watch and be like, but I had 11,000 hours on RuneScape. I was a moderator and like I was hardcore. That's a lot of my life. So I was
think I
big.
had like 2,000 hours on RuneScape.
I was a big gamer. So I was doing all this and while the work isn't sexy, doing like museum exhibits or company explainers, it's very fulfilling because I'm thinking these people are trusting me to represent their product to the world. Maybe thousands of people are listening to me and it's up to me to give them the perception that they need. And so that was really kind of an honor. And it still is an honor to me every time that somebody trusts me for that. But I was like, I want to do video games. And so then going back to, I wasn't getting any really from pay to plays and I was only on one. I was doing the Voice Realm at the time, back before it got kind of sleazy. And so I was seeing a couple, but not really. And so I was like, well, okay, let's go back to the 3 tenets of sales. And if you're going to be a professional voice actor, I strongly urge you to read sales books and selling yourself. Anything by Zig Ziglar is really good. He breaks a lot of the concepts down into stuff that's very digestible and applicable. So I had read a bunch of his stuff during my sales job. And so the 3 tenets of sales that every sales job, including voice acting, is know who is your client. The 3 questions really. Who is my client? Okay. Identify the client would be video game developers. Okay. 2, where is my client? A video game convention. Okay.
Right.
Or, wherever it is, like a local game developer meetup or something, your local university's game design college. There's answers. So then you go, okay, how can I get in front of them? Go, to there. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to conventions. So I bought my ticket to San Francisco. I Googled game developer conventions. 2015 GDC, Game Developer Convention. I was like, oh, I guess that's where I'm going to go. So I bought my plane ticket and I flew to San Francisco and I went to the convention with a bunch of business cards, not knowing what the heck I was going to do there, but that I was going to do it. And so I just started handing out cards. I didn't even have a video game demo reel at the time. I had a character. It was like kind of cartoony something or other, but it showed a good amount of range and whatever. And
Sure.
then I just started telling people that I could do video game voices for them. So wandering around the expo booth, blah blah blah. And I did that, and it was great. And then I followed up with everybody. Every business card I got, I went to their website, and so I could remember who they were, and I wrote them a personal email, not like a newsletter blast because nobody reads those. And so then like a few weeks later, somebody responded, and they were like, hey, we liked your demo. We want to know if you can cast as well as do voice work, because we have like 35 characters. And I was like, yeah,
Sure.
of course. I do that. And I'll do the vocal production too. I'll do all of it. I can do all of it. It'll be easy. I'm your one-stop shop. And then they're like, oh, great. That's great. Well, then we'll hire you. What's your budget? Or what will it cost? And I was like, I don't know.
What's her budget?
I was like, well, it really depends on the scope of what you're doing, how many actors. You like kind of BS'd a non-response, and it was like, so what were you thinking? And he was like, I was thinking like $3,000. And I was in my brain thinking, what's the lowest I would go? Maybe I'd do 1,000 just to start getting voiceover work in video games. So he's like 3,000, and I went, and I ran around the room, and because that was more or less what the whole trip out there had cost. Actually, I don't think even that much. So I ran around the room a lot. It ended up being for Wakfu Raiders, which Wakfu is a pretty serious franchise.
Right.
On Netflix, and had a couple other big games on Steam. So even more when I found that out. But so I was running around the room, and then when I calmed down, I got back to the computer and said, "Okay, yeah, that's not bad. Could you do 4,000?" And they said, "Yeah." I was like, "Yes." So I did like 30 characters myself, and it ended up being like 60 or 70 because they did some expansions and stuff. And then I cast all the female characters and put together a little casting list through MailChimp. And then I was figuring out how to do like modulations and reverbs and production tricks and doing all the different, like, make this guy sound like a robot. It taught me that I hate doing that, and I don't do that anymore. But I did it.
Fire that out.
So, and that was the beginning. And then because I realized I know a lot of actors. I can manage a project. I'm pretty organized. Like I can put the spreadsheets and get all the dialogue delivered to people and manage the files as they come back. And I am a good actor, I think, so I can listen to their auditions and determine, okay, that guy would fit well in that role. And then they had me direct the sessions too. So like now I'm kind of a session director. I don't know how qualified I am for that, but people seem to like the work that I'm sending them. So whatever. And that was just kind of that. And so then the next year I went to the convention. I'm like, yeah, I've cast like dozens of characters in games, and I had gotten a few other games in between then too from other people that later on in the year had messaged me. And so
Right.
it just kind of snowballed. And so now I ended up doing quite a lot of casting maybe 2 years ago, for at least a dozen games, and some of them ended up being pretty big. Although poor Bless Online, rest in peace, that ended up flopping super hard. But not everything's a winner.
Of
But
course.
then I tried really, when I got to LA, I really focused on trying to break into the LA market, get my national representation there. And it was tough, especially because like I was getting married and buying a house and moving all my stuff from Nashville to here and moving my wife from Nashville to here. And so like life was really hitting hard. And so my bookings and castings and everything was just like, so it took a real downturn. But this year, now that all that's done and I can just focus on being an actor, everything's great again. And so I'm starting to do more casting work again, and it's been
Nice.
a lot of fun. So we'll see
Awesome.
what I can't even fathom what next year is going to look like.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as a casting director, what is something that you like to look for in an audition?
If they listen to or if they read, I know it's the classic answer, but like it is an epidemic. Like, read the damn email, people. Like literally, like, and actors get very upset, especially the online acting community gets very upset when you indicate that maybe the casting director doesn't owe you anything. And it doesn't really matter if you get upset if the deadline ends early. It matters because my time matters. And I don't cast early. I know that if I put a casting call out, I can get hundreds of auditions in like 2 days. So I don't need to put like a 3-week deadline like a lot of newer casting people do. And then they get like 500 things and they're like, wow, we have way more than we will ever need. I'm going to
Right.
close it.
Now have to sift through all
Yeah,
that.
I got to sift through all that. I don't have that much time. 500 is way more than enough. And it's only been a week. Sorry, everybody else that waited too long or couldn't get to it, but I'm not just going to delay my project for 2 more weeks for you.
Right.
I just, and they get very upset by that. But they also won't submit the right file type. They won't name it the way you want. They'll put a big, long, rambly slate, even if you say no slate. And it makes my life much easier because then I can just delete all those. Yeah,
Yep.
if I've got 300 something auditions and I'm trying to fill 2 roles, probably likely that at least 10% of those could take a pretty good stab at it. And so by that point, you're just splitting hairs of like, especially because I usually only cast from people that are like vetted professional actors, most of whom are in LA with me.
For sure.
So like at a certain point, most or like the last shortlist is all pretty qualified. It's then seeing what sliver of a like extra nuance they could bring to it or something.
Right.
But if they like untitled or titled something wrong, and if I don't know them, if it's a friend, I'll cut them some slack and I'll be like, hey, this is for a male role and you're a girl, why'd you submit for this? But so it's also, I don't know, where am I going with this? It just read the email. That's what my
Yep.
first suggestion would be. Upload it before the deadline.
Yep.
Again, you think it would be common sense. And I'm also, sometimes life gets in the way or something happens, your tech craps out. And I'll usually give people a couple hours of leeway. But like, I just, like yesterday, somebody uploaded, I hadn't, for whatever reason, I had my Dropbox file request. I hadn't put an end to to close it. And so it was just open. Somebody uploaded files for an audition that I had posted like literally weeks ago. And like it very clearly said in the audition when it was closing. And so I don't know. And it was just a general demo request. Like it wasn't a specific, I just said, hey, I'm casting this thing. It's confidential. I just need your demos, and then I'll farm it out like the people that I make the final pick. I'll send you the actual copy. So maybe he was just thinking, oh, well, I'll send my demo in and the next time around he'll have it. But no, I just deleted your demo because you sent it in 3 weeks after the project and I wasn't asking for demos anymore. So
Right.
and again, maybe that's mean and I'm being, but so anyway, that's I guess my first couple responses.
I just started a audio production company with my demo producer, Tony
Cool.
Weiss. And we actually it was more like to get his acting and his demo production separate. And then I was like, oh, what else can you do? Oh, you can do audio production because you're an audio producer. Throw that in
Cool.
there. Well, what
Yeah.
else is audio? Casting. Let's just throw that on there. Sure enough, we started casting a couple games, and I understand where if they don't follow the instructions, if you have 100 auditions for one character and say 30 people didn't follow the instructions, that's 30 you don't have to listen to because that's going to be a lot of time wasted for you. And if you have 10 characters with as many auditions, that's a long time.
It is a long time. And it's also, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just necessarily being mean, but sometimes those instructions are how we're organizing things. So, like, if I have a list of roles and I say I want role name and then person name and whatever, and I'm organizing it alphabetically or something so I can see all of this role together. So I can just beep, 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 beep. And you put like your name first and then something else, like you totally or reverse the file name even. Well, you're not going to be in that chunk anymore. You're going to be somewhere down the list that is not in my current consideration. Or if it's like some of the casting lists that I'm a part of for studios, they'll say, send us an email and make with your audition. Do not reply to this audition, but send it with a new subject line that says game name only. Because then they're sorting the incoming emails by the title, the subject, or it might be funneling into a folder that's specific for that project. So if you're not meticulously following these directions, your submission just might not even wind up in the folder and might not even be considered. So you've got to really, really, really like read it and read it again, read it a third time. Because it I even have screwed up that same sometimes people will put info in places you don't expect it to be too. Like they'll format it weird, and then like maybe there's a at the very, very bottom in tiny text, it'll be please title your thing this way. But like or please add this word to the subject line.
Right.
So if you haven't gone through your mental checklist of, okay, did I find in here where a deadline is? Did I find in here where a file name is? Did I find in here where this instruction for submission is? You're probably missing it because it's probably there somewhere. Most people will have something. Or another example from a recent casting call that I put out was make sure you also upload a thing with your contact info on it in addition to your submission, or I can't contact you. And everybody did. It was pretty small responses, but like if they hadn't, I wouldn't have been able to contact you. So you wouldn't have gotten contacted. Or you just don't put your name in the file name and there's no slate. Who are you? I don't know. So making sure casting directors can find you again is also really important.
For sure. For sure. That makes sense. Now, on top of casting, kind of usually directing kind of coincides most of the time, not always, but it comes every once in a while. When you are directing for a project, what is something that you like to see an actor in the booth do, or just see something in the booth that the actor does?
Well, let me preface this by saying that like I don't really consider myself a director. I've done it out of convenience for projects that want it, and I'm decent at it, I guess. But like, I have friends in LA that are actually like their full-time job is to direct games
For
for,
sure.
Blind Light or Formosa or those kind of things. And like they are way more qualified and talented and getting a good performance out. So I don't want to be, and they also mostly have pet peeves about actors that are also directors because they're like, you don't really know what you're doing. So
Right.
so I'll just say that. But so from my limited experience in the maybe 8 games that I've directed sessions for, I think that a lot of times actors get more wrapped up into what they think a role should sound like instead of like following where the role would take them. Like, so for instance, if you've got what's a good example? Maybe an elderly king that is presiding over his kingdom as it's crumbling to the ground, and your immediate thought as an actor is like, oh, it's an elderly king, so I'll put on some sort of very grave and gravelly thing like that. But like in the copy, if you read through it, maybe he's like grieving, maybe he's like something else. And so rather than just sticking to your super firm archetype of stuff that you're comfortable with, like imagining yourself in his shoes, that rather than like, how dare they destroy my kingdom, that it might end up leading more toward a like, how dare they destroy my kingdom? Like, this is all that I've worked for my whole
Yeah.
life. And like now it's crumbled, so maybe there's a completely different direction, vocal timbre, quality of what you're doing, that your archetype, that's just your neat Magic the Gathering card elderly wizard, doesn't have on it, because there's a lot of nuance in there. And so a lot of times they'll give their first stab at it, and then I'll say, okay, well, sure, that's the very, very safe take. And in the auditions, that's probably what 95% of the other people would have submitted, because it's what an elderly wizard sounds like. That's what it's going to be. So, but then the job will probably go to the 5% who understand that, like, actually, it isn't that. It's something totally different, or I'll just make it totally different and take a new direction on it that makes the casting director that's heard 200 auditions and is like drooling a little. Go, oh, that's different.
What is
Oh,
that?
oh. And then, and also just take the damn direction. Like, a lot of actors will be like, oh, well, here's why I was doing that. I don't give a I don't care why you were doing it. I don't want you to do it. I want you to do this. And I know I'm sometimes guilty of that too. But that's, you got to get pride out of it. When you are in the booth as an actor, you are putty, and it is the director's job to shape you into what they want your final form to be. So if they tell you, oh, I want more energy, don't say, well, I think that the copy is leading me more toward this because it's not. Just give them more energy. You're the performing monkey. They're paying you to do what they want you to do, so just do it. And I know as artists, we have our integrity, and all, like, if they lead you to a bad performance and they pay you, then that's your paycheck.
That is true.
So, but usually, if it's a good project, the director should know enough about the project that they're not going to do that to you. So it's more of just like, get out of the way and just do what they want. And so be directable, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
For sure.
And also, another quick aside that somebody told me that I thought was really interesting. I had a commercial session, but it was a character commercial session years ago in Nashville. One of the few in-person auditions. I didn't end up booking it, but I thought I had great rapport with the casting director at the time, and she had me do my take, and I did my take. She's like, yeah, that was great. Give me something different. And I was like, and she's like, just something different. Okay. So I gave her something very different, and she was like, great. Yeah, that was very different. Okay, wonderful. So I was like, was that like another direction you wanted to go with it? She's like, no, why I usually ask that is to find out if you know where you're coming from. And I was like, oh. And she said, a lot of times when you tell an actor to do something different and they do something that's fundamentally the same, it's not necessarily because they can't. It's because they didn't really know where they were starting from. They might have thought that they did something different because they weren't locked into the role, or they weren't clued in to who they were to start with. And so then they're like, okay, well, I'll do something different. And they wound up right where they were, like going in a circle in a forest, because you don't know where you're starting from. So I thought that was fascinating. And I don't think it's always accurate necessarily. Sometimes people just don't have much range. But I thought it was really interesting to know, when you're starting, make sure you're starting and making the choices you're making for a reason. And you're not just like, well, I'll just read it. And you killed my father, prepare to die. Like, why did you make that choice? Because anime sounds like that. I don't know. Well, that's not gonna fly, So that's another really interesting take that I heard once upon a time.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually, I can visualize and see that as a way to push and see where the actor is coming from.
Yeah, well, and also I think it's important because a lot of actors especially again, I hope I'm not insulting the online voiceover community, but a lot of actors, especially in the like Twitter sphere and the Discord sphere, are acting because they really don't like who they are. And so it's kind of a form of fun, creative escapism that they're
Yeah.
becoming these other people. Well, the issue is that if you don't know who you are, then you've got more experience being you than you will ever have being somebody else. And so if you can't convincingly, authentically be you in an acting thing, like if I'm like, okay, Christian, read this script like Christian, and you're like, oh fuck, what do I do? What makes up my voice and me? Then that's going to make it really tough to say, okay, well then build off. You've got your core voice here. What shades and layers and levels are you adding or detracting from your core voice to get you to where you
Yeah.
are? Like where are you building that foundation off of? And so a lot of people, they'll go to these archetypes without having any core for them, just
Right.
because it's something they heard. But then it will almost always make the performance ring hollow because it's a imitation of that role rather than building off who you are and finding the pieces of yourself in that role to make it
Right.
authentically yours.
Right. And I know that you can, I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't have range. You can take your voice, one, bring it down, two, bring it up, three, speed it up, slow it down, mix it in. Now you got six. And again, like you said, based off of yourself, your personality, and then add subtle nuances and stumbles and stuff like that, and you can create a character.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that not having range means that like, well, I can't do a movie trailer. Like my voice isn't deep enough to do a movie, in a world. They can't get down there. So how do I increase my range to get my voice deeper? Because deep voices sound cool. Versus then like, oh, I can't do squeaky high voiced characters. How do I get up to make kind of a like how do I get my voice up there to do those kind of characters? And so they think that range is physically, literally vocal timbre, and it's just not.
Right.
Like somebody that has very little range actually might be Patrick Warburton, because almost everything he ever does sounds like him. He's got a great voice and he's a
Yeah.
good actor, but it's always pretty much him. And even the emotional choices are kind of always the same
The same.
ones. But that then there's people that have kind of that same voice, a distinctive voice like Steve Bloom, but he's got a ton of range. His emotional choices are from like gritty intensity down here to like screeching, soaring, screaming things, but he's not really doing crazy things to his voice. He's not making like, oh, in this character, I'll be a movie trailer. And then like he's not doing those. He's still Steve Bloom, but he's got tons of range because his emotional range is huge and he knows
Right.
how to apply all those emotional notes to his normal voice. So there's, I think the whole range as an actor is usually a misnomer, that they just want, how do I add more like pitch or like a higher pitch or a different
Right.
timbre
Right.
or
I
something.
can I agree with that. That is something to consider, and I think something that a lot of people in the community should definitely hear, for sure. Is there a project that you are most excited about, or if you can't talk about any, are there projects that you're excited about that are released that you can talk about?
Um, that's the plight of the working LA actor. There's four huge projects that everybody would know about and be like, "Oh my god, that's incredible!" And I can't talk about any of them. I let's see. I don't think this would break any NDAs. The biggest project I did this year, it's still ongoing. They want me back in 2020. I moved to San Francisco for 3 months to do a major narration for a large tech company. I think that's about the sum that I can say. So that was really awesome. Video game wise, the biggest one that just came out, I'm a new skin in Paladins, and that's fun. So I'm gonna go try to figure out how to play Paladins soon. That's fun. I I don't think I can say that. No. I'm yeah, I think I can say this because it's already on my IMDb, so whatever. I'm 3 characters in Ori and the Will of the Wisps. That was a huge roller coaster of I was in the game, and then the studio that was working with them for the audio quit the game, and then I found out later, and then they were like, "Oh, sorry about Ori," and I was like, "Huh?" I'm like, "Oh, we left." Well, I didn't leave. Like I'm still in the game, right? I had done 2 sessions for him by that point.
Yeah.
And so then it was a mess of a year of trying to back and forth and find out where it was now and if I could get in on it and if I was still in it or if I needed to re-audition. And I had to re-audition, and then I had to re-audition again. And then I finally did a session and confirmed that I am indeed still in it. And I got another new character out of it after all. So
Awesome.
so that was really
hard work
exciting.
pays off.
I'm not going to say that. I got to play it close to the chest. Bookings commercially this month, like I said, have been really bad. I did some big campaigns for SeaWorld and Busch Gardens a few months ago, and just dozens of spots for that. So that paid really well.
Nice.
And if you're in San Diego or Williamsburg, you probably heard me on the radio. Yeah, I think that's about it that I can say. But life is good. This year has been crazy. Just trying to see what the next month, navigating the holiday seasons and all. I'm traveling so much, and that's really hard as a working actor. You just got to be kind of taking your mic with you everywhere and getting ready to make pillow forts at every turn that you can record in.
I went to Ocean Shores and I actually took my PVC booth with me.
Nice.
I was taking a class and I was like, I'm going to take everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's tough. Unfortunately, I don't think I can. My booth over, you can see this guy. It's a little too hard to move that guy. There. So I've gotten very good at constructing pillow forts in hotel closets. I got mine from lavocalbooths.com, and I've been very happy with it. It sounds pretty good. It was pretty reasonably priced, definitely less expensive than Studio Bricks or a Whisper Room.
Right.
They've also got a lot of levels, so you can kind of pick and choose what level of sound treatment and interior treatment you want. So that's nice too.
Yeah.
So the next step would be just building a custom booth like in my house, but I don't think I can do that at this house. It's just not big enough. Nowhere to put it.
Right, for sure. Where can people go to find out more about you and more about your work?
Well, I'm trying off and on to do some Twitch streaming. So go to twitch.tv/whathesaidvo. Actually, everything I do is what he said VO. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube is all what he said VO. I'm going to try to stream some Paladins now that I'm in it. That'll be fun. And similarly, well, no, I can't say that. It's not out yet. I almost keep saying it and then I can't. So before I mess that up, you can also go to my website. whathesaidvoiceovers.com is my current site. I have been trying for a year to get a new website built, and the builder has just been intensely slow. So it's very, it's this, I think it's actually up. I don't know. Let's look. Let's see how complete it is. It's
what?
Michael. Oh, it's not ready yet. What if I do www? No, it's not ready. It's going to be www.michaelschwal.be. Michael Schwalbe, basically. And that's going to be my brand new fancy site with my face and all my cool demos, and it looks much better than my old 6-year-old
It looks
site.
amazing right now.
Yeah, not found. Great.
But
He told me he was going to be migrating it over, so hopefully within the next couple days that'll be live. I just need to finish putting some more media on it.
Oh yeah, I remember being on your current website.
Yeah, it's old. It needs.
I love your gunmetal stamped
Yeah.
metal background.
It's all right. I mean, it's not the worst looking site I've seen. It just
that is very true.
it was good 6 years ago, and it just needs some polish. So the new one is much fancier and more modern looking, and much just much better. It's custom built, whereas my current one is from WordPress and is a little limiting on what I can do with it. So
right, for sure.
At any rate, what he said, voiceovers.com is where all my current demos live, and yeah, so. I'm happy to be friends with you and other people, so feel free to hit me up. I don't really have a life outside of voiceover, so I'm happy to talk to you at any time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking the wondrous worlds of voiceover.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. This was fun and good talking to you.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Slate with guest Michael Schwalbe. If you like the episode, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell button to stay notified. I look forward to seeing you again. I see you, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, feel free also as an aside to that's not what I was asked, because I love to ramble. Like I'm all over the place. So.
This is a genuine conversation, no tracks. Take any detour you need to get there.
Okay, good. You say that now. Anyway, but little did he know where they would end.
Whew.